Hey guys, it's Cash here again. I haven't made a video in a really long time, but the build that I'm playing this league has been insanely fun and probably one of the most well-rounded, high damage, high EHP builds that I've played in a really long time. I decided to try out Garotha and Zizaran's Archmage Ice Nova Frostbolts, and when I liked it so much, I decided to min-max it and see if there was a way that I could build the build a little bit differently, maybe cheaper, but just in a different way than everybody else. So the way that I came up with this idea is a few leagues ago, I used the 50% increased cast speed focus mod on gloves. And this got me thinking if there are any other mods that could be built around focus stacking. I decided to go focus stack because it really sounded cool. And one of the things that I found when I was looking at focus stacking was the hyperboreus belt. So obviously belts are kind of the weakest part of the game until you get a mage blood. And hyperboreus is a really cool unique that was pretty cheap and can give you a lot of good mods based around focus. So what it can give you is up to 50% cooldown recovery rate of focus, chill nearby enemies when you focus, causing 30% reduced action speed, up to 70% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, and the coolest part is it has a unveiled suffix on the bottom. So the reason why I find this insanely strong is one of the unveils that you can get is your critical strike chance is lucky while focused, with an extra 8% cooldown recovery rate of focus. So this mod is absolutely strong. If you don't know what Lucky does, Lucky is roll twice and the best result is you. So if you only have a 50% crit chance and you have Lucky, your effective crit chance is actually 75% because it rolls 50% twice. And if the second roll is to crit and the first one isn't, it'll take the crit roll. So this belt is really cool because it gives you a lot of cooldown on your focus, and it also gives you a lucky critical strike chance while focused. On top of the focus belt, I found a few other ways of stacking focus. One of them is your boots. You can get a suffix that's an unveil or crafted mod with up to 35% focus cooldown recovery rate. You can get up to 20% double damage on wands from the unveil, and you can get focus fizz reduction on gloves on top of the 50% cast speed on gloves that I was talking about before. And the coolest one of them all is you can get 40% recovery of mana and ES when you focus. So this is not an overtime mod, this is an instant mod. So as soon as you click focus, you'll instantly get back 40% ES and mana, and it's basically a panic flask for your ES and mana. Stacking these mods together, you can get up to 40% double damage, 50% attack and cast speed, 40% of instant recovery of mana and ES, critical strikes are lucky with only about a 4.3-ish second cooldown on focus. So this combination gives you a heavy bursting for bosses and basically instant panic flash for ES and mana. So some of you guys may have come from Sushi's video to mine, but if you haven't seen the clip that he posted, the new Haunted by Tormented Spirits enchant that you can craft on your wands is absolutely insane. This craft gives you 35% attack and cast speed, damage, and movement speed, and can be stacked to have two of them going at once for an effective 70% of all of those mods. This is what it looks like when you run that with Frostblink of Wintry Blast.
So this is my current build with all of that movement speed. So this is a strand. It's a little bit hard to control, but you know, we'll get through the whole thing in a second. You know, just hold on here. All right, we're at the boss. Okay. You know, you just gotta, yes, I mean, you probably know how the DPS is gonna go. It's, yeah.
So as you can see, it's crazy stacking this with the amount of cast speed that we already get and the huge amount of damage from Archmage that makes this build absolutely insane and gives you an insane amount of damage. So I will mostly be going over the higher budget hyperboreus build and explaining which mods are most important, what to upgrade to from the non-hyperboreus build or from the lower budget to the higher budget. You shouldn't be moving over to the hyperboreus build until you have a few sources of focus, that being the wands with double damage on them, the gloves with the 50% increased attack and cast speed while focused. This mod is not quite as necessary, the focus cooldown, but I definitely would recommend getting it if you can. Then of course, hyperboreus has critical strike chances lucky. You can move over without having the critical strike chances lucky. I don't know if this belt's going to be absolutely gone once this video is made, but try to get a belt at least with the high focus recovery rate on it at minimum, maybe the chilled damage, because that gives you a good amount of damage. So for the helmet, we'll be using Kitava's Thirst. This will allow us to automate casting Ele Weakness and Frostbolts that we'll be casting Ice Nova on top of. For the lower budget, you will have to click more buttons such as Sigil of Power and Frost Shield, but if you look at the other two POBs, we've got a trigger socketed spell on using a skill with a 4-second cooldown on one of them, and this allows it so you can automate Sigil of Power, Assassin's Mark, and Frost Shield. So for this higher budget, we'll be using 2 wands with obviously mana, DD while focused, DD if you can, and then spell damage, one of them having a trigger and both of them having the haunted modifier. This enchant is quite expensive now. I think it's up to 50 or 60 div. So it kind of sucks that it raised up so quickly. It was only like 15 a couple days ago. But if you can afford to get it, or if you can get it, I definitely would recommend doing it. The other mods that you can get on here as well would be crit. Crit on a suffix would be not too bad, but as you can see, we're at like 76% and effective 94% with the hyperboreus. Critical strike chance is lucky, so crit isn't as important, but definitely cast speed, mana, spell damage. You can even multi-mod double damage and cast speed on the suffixes, and you'll have a pretty good one. We now move into a +1 max power charge, Kitava's Thirst. If you can't find one of these, then I would get a cold damage leeches life or a lightning damage leeches life helmet, and both of those will be very usable, very good, and that allows you to remove the lightning damage leeches life on your gloves and grab something else. For the chest, we're now using a energy shield evasion rare chest with focus recovery mod and suppress. So basically everything else is a filler, but if you do look at the mage blood setup, on here, I've got a fractured additional curse. This is a delve mod that you can get fractured. It is a prefix, and this mod is really nice and gives you an insane amount of damage. So I would definitely recommend, if you can, get the fractured. As long as it's on an ES base or an evasion ES base, I would definitely recommend getting it. Evasion ES would be best, but just ES would be fine too. For the implicits, you want to use Fizz taken as Ellie. So any element is fine since all of our reses are the same. And then you want to get the gain an endurance charge every X seconds on it. You can go for the perfect one, which is 10 seconds, and then you don't need to take a mastery. But if you don't want to go for that one, or if it's too expensive, you can even use a lesser Ichor and get 100% increased charge duration to have permanent uptime on the extra endurance charge that we grab over here. And that is a good amount of EHP, and that's the reason why we take it. We're using a 4-link Archmage, Frostblink, Power Charge and Crit, and Spell Echo setup. This you can actually clear maps with, which is kind of insane. If you look at the damage for Frostblink, it's like 13 mil DPS just with Frostblink. So you can clear maps just Frostblinking around, and it's basically like Flicker Strike like you saw in Sushi's video, and that's really nice to use. You can use an Essence of Insanity, which is the socketed gems have 16% more attack and cast speed until you get Suppress or whatever suffix prefixes that you want, and then either craft on or unveil the attack and cast speed while focused mod. That is a suffix, so just keep that in mind. If you don't want, or if you need res, then I definitely would recommend grabbing some res on here, but Suppress is really important, so at minimum, get Suppress. You could just not use the Essence and not have the socketed gems mod. That would be completely fine. But yeah, definitely use this to fill in your stats because it's a little bit of workaround for this build. For the boots, since I didn't really need anything, I just used a cannot be poisoned essence. You can use anything, like I said, if you need res, if you need dex, etc. This build is really dex lacking, so I would recommend putting a dex essence on here instead of the cannot be poisoned. Getting the focus cooldown recovery rate is really important. So if you can get that unveiled, do it. And then obviously suppress to gain more suppress and get suppress capped. For the prefix, you want the onslaught because that onslaught on kill gives you a good boost in damage. For our amulet, we've moved over to an utmost amulet. This gives us a crazy amount of suppression, max res, cast speed, damage pen. It's just insane overall. But if you can't afford one yet, or can't find a good one, just use it Zeres for now. And for the Anoint, we want to use Whispers of Doom since it gives us access to Assassin's Mark, which is massive damage. For the rings, I'm using Crit Multi Synth Implicit rings. I found these for really cheap. I think they were a div each. If you don't want to go that route, you can go a Fractured base. Like I would go like a fractured power ring with maybe increased mana regen rate or cast speed, or if you need a certain or life even, or if you need a certain res dex, I would probably do that instead. Just grab a fractured ring and then you can craft on it, throw some essences at it, and get basically what you need to fill in. So all res, resistances, etc. For the belt, I would definitely recommend getting hyperboreus, since this is what this whole build is built around, and get a high focus cooldown recovery rate if you can, and the critical strike chance is lucky. That's just a really good mod, and that gives you, like you can see, it takes his crit chance from 64 to 87 on this build. It's a very, very good mod. Sorry, we're on the wrong. 76 to 94% on this build. It's a really good mod, really strong. For damage, we want Bottled Faith, of course, crit chance, 10% more damage. Aureus End is really good for clear because it gives you explode. You don't need to use this, but it's a really nice flask to use for clear, especially on T17s. Life Flask with low life, instant recovery, Jade Flask, Diamond Flask, etc. Looking at our jewels, we're utilizing Light of Meaning in conjunction with Unnatural Instinct to get you basically capped or overcapped chaos res for free. So, and all these mods. So if you can get this set up, I definitely would recommend it. Later on, if you can get chaos res and then add something else in here, you can get the mana one, you can get a damage one, life, etc. It's a really good jewel, and it's in a really good spot for what we're using. For the Militant Faith, you need to go high Templar Dominus. So look up Dominus because this gives us 3% more spell damage per power charge, and we're stacking power charges a little bit with this build, so it's a good amount of damage. And on top of that, for the two mods, you can either get Ellie res, you can get reduced mana cost of skills, you can get mana regen, Ellie damage. Basically just look up Devotion. If you look up Devotion, look through the mods, you can pick mods that you'd like. Make sure when you're looking for one though, this is very important, make sure when you're looking for one, look up the one that you find, copy it into your PoB, and make sure that it doesn't brick any of these that you want to use. If there's any of these that you want to use and it bricks them, do not buy it because it bricks your build. And also, we don't have enough devotion there to even get the 150 devotion that you get from a bricked mod. So just leave it at that. Get one that doesn't brick anything. For up here, we've got Healthy Mind. This is just a regular, gives you a huge amount of mana, increases reduction to life and radius to transfer into mana. So that's why we take these to get a good amount of mana from it as well. And that's about it for jewels. In the build, I've set all of the skills to 21 that I feel are the most important. Of course, getting all 21s is ideal, but these are going to be the priority ones that'll give you a good amount of boosted damage, and that I would still recommend actually getting 21 on. For leveling, I would definitely check out Garotha's PoB or Zizaran's PoB. Both of them are very good, but I do like Garotha's PoB a little bit more. That's where I built mine around. So I'll link his video in the description as well as a PoB for it in the description so you guys can take a look. He's done quite a good job in setting everything up and the leveling up, and I think his video was really good for this. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the build. I'll be uploading some crafting videos on how to craft the gear cheaply, as well as some more min-max versions of crafting the wands, etc. So just subscribe and you'll see when they'll be uploaded. See you, nerds!